Welcome back to my studio. My name is Monica, and today I thought we could do something holiday related. And I had this idea. I was actually looking for some inspiration for painting Christmas cards, and we're actually going to go into that in a different video. But I saw something really cute, and I thought, oh my gosh, we painted these little fairy pots not too long ago, and um, I thought I could translate what I saw, which was actually a quilt block, um, into painting some little mini planters. And so I did a little experiment, and I came up with this, and I loved it. And I love it because it's super easy. You can have your kids help you do this, and it makes a great gift. So, like if you're looking for some holiday favors to hand out at the office, you can just buy these little pots. I paid, I think, 99 cents. And I just wanted to show you really quick. There are different sizes. So I bought these little bitty ones that are 99 cents. And then they have like the next size up, which I don't know how much these were, maybe a couple bucks. But if you're going to give somebody a plant, I would suggest going with the bigger size, because I had a really difficult time finding succulents that were this small. So I just filled mine with candy. And it makes a great gift, and you can gift somebody all three, and they don't take any time to make. So that's what we're going to do today, and I'm going to show you how I did mine. So we're going to do the Santa one first, and it's nice because you have this little rim on these terracotta pots, and it's basically a built-in belt. So I'm going to start with my craft paint, and you'll need red, green, white. I have gold, and I have black. So those are the colors I'm going to be using, and these are all matte. I prefer the matte finish because we're going to be using some Posca markers on top of these, and I think it just adheres better. So I'm going to start off with my my red acrylic paint, and I have my paper plate that I have used for many projects, and I never seem to throw this away. It just seems to get more and more acrylic paint built up on top. I'm just going to start by grabbing a decent sized brush, and I'm using mostly flat brushes for this, and these are just inexpensive craft brushes that I'm using. And I don't do anything to prep these little pots. I just peel the sticker off and then start painting. And you want to start with a fairly thin coat, and I really have to water this down. Go in with a thin coat. It's going to require a couple of coats, and I just basically paint the bottom part. So I'm going to speed this up because this is boring to watch me paint the whole bottom part of this. So okay, so that's one thin coat, and I'm going to clean my brush off, and I'm going to move on to painting my little elf one, and I'm using bright green for this one. And of course you can choose your own colors, so I want to make sure that my brush is really clean. I don't want any red mixing in with the green because they're actually opposite on the color wheel, and that red would really dull down the green. So I want to make sure my brush is nice and clean and doesn't have a lot of water on it. And we're going to do the same thing with this. One thin coat. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to do white for the snowman. Just make sure you've got a really clean brush, and we're going to put on another thin coat. Okay, so I'm going to give those a minute to dry, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to reapply a second coat. I would just say that when you're putting the paint on, kind of double check and make sure you don't have any big blobs. I try to smooth that out. And when we come back, we'll move on and paint this top area. Okay, so all of these have a second coat on them, and I'm going to do the same thing with the red one and the green one. I'm going to paint the black belt, and depending on the coverage, I'll see if I need 2 coats. I will probably do 2 coats because sometimes the first layer can be streaky. And I do like to paint this rim on the top. It just looks a little bit more finished. And you can try your hand at getting this little piece underneath. And if it doesn't work, you can always go back and kind of cover that up with the red. So I'm going to do the same with these, and I'm going to speed this up. And I don't think that I'm going to need a second coat on this. So when I come back, we'll do the snowman. Okay, so for this little snowman pot, I wanted to show you the other one that I did. Instead of this being a belt, this is going to be his scarf. So you need to decide what colors you want to use for the scarf, and you can use any color combination that you want. I think this time I'm going to do a blue, and then I might do the details in red. So I'm going to go ahead and get this painted. And I'm not sure how many coats this one's going to take. So I'll speed this up again. And when everything is nice and dry, we'll come back and work on the details. Okay, so now that this is painted and pretty dry, you can see I've got a couple little mistakes here where I've gone over with the blue, and I'm going to clean that up with my Posca marker when I'm doing the details. But before I clean my brush out, I want to decide where I want the rest of this scarf to hang down. So I'm going to do it just like I did this, kind of like it's been, knotted, and that's the part that's coming out underneath. And so I'm just going to pick a place where I would put the buttons and then decide, where I want my scarf to hang down. And when you're using a flat brush, use your flat brush as it was intended to be used, I guess. So take advantage of the fact that you're using a flat square brush, and that will help you, make this line straight down. And I do this double. I try to get the width of this about the same as the width of this. And this is probably going to need a couple of coats. And you can see how much more vibrant the blue is on the white. So something to note, if you wanted to prime all of these with white before you painted the colors, you could definitely do that, but it just won't be as quick of a project, if you do that. So I'm trying to get these edges as clean as I can, and if I make any mistakes, I can go back with my Posca pen and clean it up, so it's not a big deal. And this doesn't have to be perfect anyway, so these are hand painted, and you want them to look that way. So I think that's pretty good. And I'm going to let these all dry, and I'm going to go grab my Posca markers. while these are drying. And I'll see you back here in just a sec. Okay, so I have an assorted collection here of some Posca pens. And you just need to decide, as far as your scarf goes, what colors you want to use to detail it. And I'm not sure if I want to do the pink or the blue yet. And then I've got white, black, and red. So we're going to use these colors along with some gold metallic to finish off the belts and do the buttons. And before I get started with that, I did want to add the little like white ruff on the coat before my paint dries up. So in order to do that and to get it to look like it has some texture to it, grab a junky kind of bristly brush, and we're going to use that, and we're just going to pounce on top of this. Just pick an area where you want the front to be, because we're going to put the belt buckle right above it. So I'm just kind of smushing my brush in here, and then I'm going to tap it off on my paper towel and just start adding this straight down. And I'm going to make mine, a little bit wider than this. But you want it to have this like fuzzy kind of texture. And you can hold your brush differently too, you can hold it horizontally or vertically. But we just want the feel of like, soft and fuzzy. And I'm going to dry this really quick, and then I'm going to hit it with a second coat. And I'll just do this one more time. And I think that's good. So now we can start on the details. And while that one's drying, I'm going to go ahead and start on the elf. So for this, I'm going to use a really small, long, kind of a flat brush. And I tried this with washi tape as like to mask out the shape of the belt, and it was a lot messier than just doing this freehand with a brush, because it only takes a couple of little swipes with the brush to get this right, unless of course you're like me and you get it on your hands. So okay, that's where I'm gonna put my belt, since I've already made a mess there. And this is gonna take a couple of coats too. So you just take your brush and make a swipe down. And do the same thing going across. And the brush does all the work for you because it's already the shape of a rectangle. So, and that's pretty much it. Now you can add a second coat to that because you can see it's a little bit transparent. So I've got to let that dry first. And I'm going to wait until, well, I think this is okay. We're going to go ahead and do the same to this one. And I love these little pots because they're super easy. And this would be something that your kids can help you make too. And they're quick. Okay, so that'll need a second coat as well. So I'm going to rinse out my brush and go ahead and start on my scarf. So you can decorate your scarf any way, obviously, that you want. And you have to prime your pens, give them a good shake, and then just kind of pump the tip to get the paint going. And then decide how you want to decorate your scarf. And I think I'm going to do stripes again. And I'm going to do a pink stripe and a blue stripe, and I'm just going to go all the way around. And I tried doing this with my paintbrush and my paint, and I found that I have more control with the Posca markers. So I'm trying to keep up this like pattern that I have of like wide and then two that are a little closer. I think that's pretty good. And I'm going to do the same thing on the part that's hanging down, except I'm going to go obviously in the opposite direction. I'm just going to put a couple there. And I think actually now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to use the same color, but I'm going to use a bigger marker so I get a bigger stripe. Okay. And I have to decide where I want these stripes to go, so maybe I'll do the big one right on the right side of that. And then I'll do one in the middle. You can do polka dots, you can do anything you want to do with these. This is the fun part, so. Okay, so I definitely want to put some little fringes at the bottom of the scarf, and I'm going to use my blue pen and make some little dots here. And then I'm going to use the pink marker and put the actual little pieces of fringe hanging down. Okay. I could keep going with this too, so I could add in a ton of different stripes, but I think that's good for me. I'm going to do the blue and the pink. And then the next thing that this one needs is buttons. And I'm using a really big black marker because I'm not going to have to work very hard to make a circle with this. Now, if you use a smaller pen, you'll have to, try to be more precise. But I think with the bigger pen, it'll be easier to get a more precise kind of a dot. And it's a little tricky because sometimes there's ridges on the paint. So that looks pretty good. And I'm going to grab my white Posca pen, and I'm going to clean up some of these blue edges that I kind of messed up a little bit here on the bottom where it's a little bit wonky. I can just go over this with my Posca pen and clean those up. And the last thing that I would do on this one is to add some little highlights to the button. And just make sure that they're dry. These are not quite dry yet, so I'm gonna hit this with the heat gun. And I'm gonna make like a little reverse C shape on each of these buttons very carefully. And I probably need to put my glasses back on. I just follow the curve. Like that. And I would call that one done. And I would fill this with some candy, you know, like I've got these little blue and white or blue and silver candies. You can fill them with Hershey's Kisses or, you know, candy canes, whatever you want to fill them with. And these would make, like I said, these make great little gifts for the office, somebody that loves plants. But I know that, like, for myself here, transporting plants at this time of year is not a good idea. So you could just make these little planters for people, and then they can fill them with whatever plants they have after they eat the candy, of course. And I've got a little black on my white here, and that other Posca pen had red on it, so I'm just gonna quickly clean this up here. And it seems I'm making it worse. So I'm gonna let that dry, and I still have some white paint, and I can go in and fix that. So while that's drying, I can add a second coat of this gold. And make sure that you don't have any water in your brush. So I just did. Okay, so the last thing I would do to finish off the Santa one is I would dip the back of my paintbrush in the paint, in the gold paint, and I'm going to add a couple of little dots. And every time I dip it in my paint, I tap it on my paper towel first, because that first dot's always going to be pretty big. So I'll just do a few dots on each side. Maybe one on this side. If I can get it. Maybe another one. Like that. So I would call this one pretty much finished. And now we're going to do the elf. And I'm going to add that second coat onto the belt. And I'll do the same thing with the dots. Something like that. Now for the elf, the way I like to finish these off, we're going to use the back of our paintbrush, and instead of tapping it off on the paper towel, I'm just going to go right in here and make some buttons, some gold buttons right under here. And try to get these lined up the best that I can. Like that. Get that cleaned off. And the last part of this, I'm going to embellish the bottom so that it looks like the end of the tunic that you see elves wearing. So they usually have like red and white striped tights on, and I kind of want that to be like showing through. So I'm going to start with my red Posca pen. And you can do this any way that you want, but I'm going to start by making triangle shapes all the way around. Okay, so once you have those in, then you can take your pen and very carefully color all of this in. I like to color all of these little triangles in. So that's done. And you can keep going with this. I added a little bit more embellishment to mine on this other one. I think what I'm going to do with this one is let this dry, and then I'm just going to add in maybe a band of white on the very, very bottom and call that one finished. And I think our snowman is completely dry, so I can go ahead and touch that up with the paint. And that pretty much wraps us up for these little holiday favors. And I did want to show you one other thing. So I took this Santa and I put some little fake plants in it just to kind of show you the idea. But I managed to find these poinsettias, these little mini fake poinsettias. So what I'm thinking is I could cut these. I'm having a hard time cutting this. I don't have any wire cutters, but you could take some of the florist foam and, you know, cut it to fit in the bottom of these little pots. And if you get the stems cut off, you could fill these with little mini poinsettias, which would be really cute. And I might try that once I get my wire cutters out. And then you could fill it with some moss too to kind of finish it off. So if you didn't want to use candy, there are, you know, a bunch of different options. And I'm going to go ahead and finish off this white part, and then I think that pretty much wraps everything up. So I hope you had fun with this, and I hope you get your kids in on the action, because this is a really fun project to do, and it doesn't take that long, and I think everybody would have a lot of fun doing it. So I will see you next time, and happy painting.